Hi there, today we're going to make an art doll using one of my doll faces that are available to download on Etsy, and I'm using this absolutely amazing stuff called Heat and Bond Light because it's really great for attaching fabric onto other fabric, which makes it really easy to sew around, and then it doesn't sort of shift around and you don't have to use pins. So this is what it looks like. It has a paper on one side and then like a glue, sort of shiny glue thing on the other, and what I did was just cut out some A4 sheets using a template. I just used a big sheet of card for that, and I'm going to be using some cotton fabric here, some white cotton fabric, and this is because I'm going to print off my doll faces onto the fabric. So I set my iron to the two spots and ironed the paper side of the Heat and Bond Light onto the piece of cotton fabric. So the glue is facing onto the fabric obviously, and you iron over on the paper itself. Then I pop it into the printer and I just print my faces off straight away like that. Now I've got lots of them in the shop at the moment, so you're sort of spoilt for choice really with the doll faces if this is the sort of thing you're into, and this is the one that I'm going to use today. But I've also printed them off on different sizes, so this is printed off by selecting A5 size on my printer. I really like these ones actually, the Sassy Girl, but I'm not using her today. I'm using the slightly larger one, so that's the size that it comes off when you print it as A4, and that's what it looks like when you peel the paper backing off. It's like that lovely glossy glue. And this is another doll called Kitty, but I decided not to use her either. So I did a quick sketch of a doll body, and this is what I want her to look like, and then I put her as a template on Procreate, and I've got her as a template to download on Ko-Fi if you wanted to use it. Now these are the supplies that I'm using. I'm using a cotton fabric as her base, and I'm using all these gorgeous silk fabrics which are offcuts from the dress fabric, the dressmaking, like ball gowns and things like that, and I'm using that particular face there in the corner. So what I'm going to do is cut her out obviously, and I have picked a sheet of paper and I've printed off my template, and what I need to do is cut that out. And obviously I'm going to need fabric scissors, but please don't use your fabric scissors for your paper when you print off your template because that's not great. You don't want to blunt your scissors. So what I do is just cut out the template and then I cut around, leaving a seam allowance all the way around the doll because I wanted it to be as big as possible. So it's printed out as big as I can on my A4 printer, and then I cut around the template, just leaving a seam allowance so I've got plenty of space around it to sew, and you'll see why later because I'm actually going to use my sewing machine around it. Now I'm going to stick my doll face onto the fabric, and I'm going to sew all the way round so that I can stuff her at some point. But what I'm starting with is the arms, so I sew the arms together. So I've cut out 4 pieces of fabric for the arms, and they're all the same, but I'll sandwich 2 together and just sew around there, leaving a bit of a gap so that I can then add some stuffing into them, and then I just close the gap. Now one of the arms I wanted the hand to be slightly longer because I'm going to have to fold it over because I'm actually going to get her holding a suitcase. Now I've not done that yet, but that's what that is for. So I just left it without the stuffing in the very end so I could turn it over. Now these are all the fabrics that I'm using. I got some absolutely gorgeous sari silk ribbon from Yarn on Etsy, so I'll link that below if you wanted to check out their stuff because they're absolutely fantastic. And I have selected a few colours that I really like to go together. You can see I'm going for the pinks and the burgundies and the oranges, and I was really feeling these colours. So I decided what I was going to do was stick some of these lovely reds and oranges together. So I'm going to have to sew some of them together. And also I didn't have quite enough for the back, so what I've had to do is a bit of a Frankenstein effort here. So basically just sort of piecing the fabric that I've got together and then stitching it together. And what I needed to do was check that the face was going to fit perfectly, because what I want to do is layer the red over the top of the base, and I want the red fabric to sort of cover the edge of the face, if that makes sense. So I've cut out the hole for the face just slightly smaller than the face of the doll that I've cut out. Now this is fantastic stuff. It's phrase stop, and I use this quite a lot when I'm dealing with this sort of fabric, if I'm making doll clothes and stuff like that, because if it frays, you lose quite a lot of the fabric and it's really hard to stitch. So I find that if I use a bit of phrase stop, that really helps and stops that from happening. So this is my Frankenstein effort on the back of the doll, and I thought, what's the best way to do this? Of course, it's an A4 template size, so I thought, well, if I get another sheet of the Heat and Bond Light in A4 size, all I have to do then is iron the scraps of fabric onto the Heat and Bond Light, because then it's sort of all automatically held together, and then I'll find it a lot easier to stitch. And of course then I can just automatically iron it onto the base fabric, the cotton base fabric that I'm using. So I've got the base fabric cut out, and what I'm doing is adding the face onto the front of the doll base fabric, and then what I'm going to do is layer the silk over the top of that. So the first thing I need to do is just make sure that my face is well positioned, so I'm happy with it where it is, and then what I'll do is add the layer of silk over the top. So I put the face where I wanted it to be, just layer in that top piece of silk over it just to see what it looked like and see what sort of position. And I thought I just wanted it slightly tilted. I wanted her head slightly tilted, like she was sort of looking and just, you know, sort of gently gazing down. So I pinned my upper fabric down so that it didn't move, and that way I could just make sure I'd got exactly the right position. And then I peeled the backing off my face, which has obviously got the Heat and Bond Light on, and I just then put that down onto the base fabric and ironed it on like I did with the printing fabric that I was using. So now I'm just going to add the lovely silk that I Frankensteined to the back of the art doll shape, the template cotton piece that I'm using, and I just basically just ironed it on so that it would be easy to sew in place, and then I just cut around any excess, removed any excess. Now because I'm layering another piece of fabric on the bottom, because I wanted her to have a different colour, almost like a skirt, so like her base is like a slightly different colour, I was using this lovely sort of check silk. I really love this, and I just wanted to make sure that they were held together and about the same angle, so I've put those together and I'm pinning them together. Now that little snippet of the felt there is really useful because there's so many threads with this silk. You want a thread catcher, and that's literally just a disc of card with some felt on top, so that might be something that you want to consider doing. So I took it over to my sewing machine and I stitched around the face to make sure that that was held in place, and then I stitched around the outside of the doll shape to make sure that the silk was held in place on the doll base body. Then I have cut away any excess, and I picked out some pretty threads that I could use then to just stitch the other parts of the silk in place. Now these are the extra little pieces that I'm using, and I'm actually taking them out into the garden, so I picked out those gorgeous shades of red and pink, and I'm going to use this as like a little shawl, like a little wraparound for her. So I'm going to take that into the garden now and just complete it. So that's a little shawl that's going on the top of her head, just a little head cover, and she's going to have like this little shawl that sort of goes round and ties at the back. So what I've done already, so that I can take it all out into the garden, is attach the front and the back together and turn her right way out, and then I'm stuffing her with some polyfill, which was from some toys that I bought for my daughter years ago when she had one of those teddy stuffing parties. And I've also embellished the front of her face using some cute little crystals and some little sequins there as well. And you can see she stands up lovely now she's stuffed. So what I need to do is add a little base to her, and I have got my measurements ready, and I'm thinking that she's going to be a 5-inch bottom. So luckily I had a piece of card, so I was able to just measure whether that would fit, and then I knew what size to cut out, and I was able to use that piece of card, that circular piece of card at 5-inch diameter for her base. Now the stitching is obviously not perfect, I was showing you there, but you know, this is an art doll and I like it, so you know, nothing has to be perfect when it comes to creativity, does it? So that 5-inch circle fits perfectly on the bottom, so I just used it as a template and then cut around a little bit more base cotton so that I could add that to the base of her, and then she will stand up nicely. Again, I use my fray stop because that just stops it from fraying and losing too much of that fabric. So I've sewn that together. I'm out in the garden again, and I am sewing on those pieces of sari silk to make her lovely shawl that she's going to be wearing around her. And that's my knee, you can see there. I'm out in the garden enjoying a bit of sunshine, and I'm also going to add a little bit of the sari ribbon to the shawl at the top as well. So that one just ties around her body, so I'm just showing you how that works, but obviously I've still got to add her arms yet. So here we are back adding the arms, and that little bit of fabric that I cut round to cut out for her face, I have used that as like little cap sleeves for her dress. So that arm is going to, that hand is going to hold the suitcase, but I've not finished that yet, and the other hand obviously is fully stuffed. So there's a little bit of sari silk that's attached to the headscarf, and I made the headscarf into sort of a triangular-ish shape so that I could just pull it around her head, and just attached it with a couple of stitches here and there just to make sure it didn't fall off. And that's what she looks like. And then if I just take the little scarf, you can see that's got those gorgeous colours there. I kept it frayed, but I really like the look of this, and then it's got a front and a back to it, and it's got plenty of sari silk that can just wrap around her and then tie in a little knot at the back, and that's what she looks like now, and I'm really pleased with her. She's sitting just outside my craft room giving me some support, and I just think she's absolutely gorgeous and I love her, and that's my cup for scale purposes. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and you can download the template on Ko-Fi. Take care, bye!